Hey guys, since the release of the Baten Kaitos Remaster duology is just around the corner, and Nintendo did not see fit to attend Summer Game Fest 2023 for some reason, and aren't exactly hustling to market this gem, it seems the task has fallen to me. Please note that I am not being sponsored, although frankly I should be with what a crummy, non-existent job they've done with marketing this release, but whatever. I'm just a passionate fan who would really like to see these games get the second chance they deserve. So, Baten Kaitos. What is it and why should you play it? The Baten Kaitos games are a pair of highly unique deck-building JRPGs from the early 2000s GameCube library. At the time of these games' original releases, people were pretty turned off by card battling games for some reason. They had a stigma, everyone thought they were Yu-Gi-Oh! Clones. Online discourse was not very sophisticated at the time, unfortunately, and there was a lot of empty-headed groupthink in the West regarding the deck-building genre. These days, however, it's an extremely popular RPG subgenre, and while Baten Kaitos isn't the most sophisticated of its ilk, it is still extremely fun and satisfying. Furthermore, if you're a fan of Monolith Soft or the Xenoblade games, then I've got news for you. Same devs. These games have fantastic world-building elements, colorful and creative town and environmental designs, and an eclectic and charming core playable cast. Oh, and they're also home to literally the best work of legendary game composer Motoi Sakuraba's entire career. No big deal. The soundtracks are that consistently excellent across the board. The games also take place in a unified world, so if you enjoyed one, you're more than likely to be invested in the other. Now, I don't want to talk story too much because both of these games have great writing and character development, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't played them, which, statistically speaking, is most people. I will, however, give you a basic synopsis and hook for each of them to, try and convince you to play them. The world of these two games consists of a series of floating sky continents, each with their own distinct cultures. All the people in the world of Baten Kaitos possess wings of the heart, which basically means they can sprout wings and fly, and everyone's wings look unique because they are derived from that person's soul. The people of this world also employ ubiquitous use of Magnus cards, which are kind of like Pokeballs for inanimate objects, except in card form. Basically, imagine if you could store any non-living object of any size and weight inside a playing card. It would be crazy convenient, but it's also the central hook behind each entry's deck-building combat system, as well as their overworld exploration and environmental puzzles. While each game tells a largely independent story from the other, they do have one common and unique narrative hook. That being the fact that while they have traditional protagonists, you, the player, are technically not playing as that protagonist. You are playing as their guardian spirit, who they converse with regularly. Most of the time, this does not directly affect the gameplay mechanics, but it is tied into the game's stories in some very fun and creative ways. Now, the original game, Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, is essentially one part traditional hero's quest and one part hot-blooded revenge story. The primary protagonist, Callus, is a refreshing divergence from the typical altruistic JRPG protagonist. He is motivated purely by a desire to claim vengeance on a man named Giacomo for reasons which are made apparent early on. Giacomo is, as you might expect, a man of high station who is not easy to get close to, but you will encounter him surprisingly often, which allows the narrative to build more personal stakes and get the player invested in Callus's revenge quest. Giacomo's a huge douchebag. The game's secondary protagonist is a girl named Shella, who is a more traditional, well-intentioned heroine who is seeking to prevent the game's resident evil empire from assembling a group of MacGuffins called the End Magnus, which will allow them to summon a world-ending demon named Malpertio. Shella ends up aligning herself with Callus because Giacomo is a high-ranking Imperial who has been tasked with collecting these End Magnus, and so their journey begins. Eternal Wings ultimately assembles a party of 6, although only 3 characters may be used in combat at a time. While I will not give further details than this, I do want to leave you with one last hook. Eternal Wings is home to the single greatest betrayal in the history of fiction. I shit you not. The betrayal in this game is so compelling, well executed, and the saboteur's identity is so genuinely surprising that it blows my mind that no one has copied or emulated it since. It hasn't even become overused over the years, so it will have just as much impact today as it did at the game's original release. The story introduces the idea of a traitor amongst the party towards the end of the first disc, but their exact identity and the ultimate resolution of that plot thread doesn't happen until later. And it is a fantastically over-the-top scene that remains burned into my memory to this day. And I know this will be incredibly vague to anyone who hasn't played the game, but it's also tied into an aspect of the game's setup that takes a fundamental concession of the narrative and turns it into a major plot point. It's just genius. You need to play this game. Baten Kaitos Origins, then, as the name suggests, is a prequel to Eternal Wings. However, this is the kind of prequel that I feel is best experienced after the original. The reason for this is because it tells a largely standalone story, with major characters and plot points from Eternal Wings being relegated largely to small-scale fan service. Origins takes place roughly 50 or so years before Eternal Wings, and as such, most of the playable cast of Eternal Wings literally haven't even been born yet. Most of the characters who do make cameos have such a small role that if you play Origins first, you may not even remember them by the time they show up in Eternal Wings. So play Eternal Wings first. Now, as for the setup. Again, you technically play as the protagonist's guardian spirit, but speaking in terms of game mechanics, you're mostly put in control of a man named Sagi. The powers of Sagi's guardian spirit are notably different from those of Calus's, and there is a distinct reason for this, which ties into Origins' central twist, which is completely different from the one in Eternal Wings. They did not copy-paste plot points and twists in this prequel, and I love it for that. Anyway, Origins gives you a party of 3, all of which are called into battle at once. Sagi is your balanced all-rounder, Gilo is a glass cannon, and cute little Milliard is actually your tank for some very interesting narrative reasons which will become apparent later on. They're a charming trio with great chemistry. Sagi is much more of a generic JRPG protagonist Chan than Calus in terms of his fundamentally altruistic personality traits, but he is not a silent protagonist, and he does have an edge to him, displaying the full gamut of darker emotions throughout the narrative. Gilo is a living weapon who is loyal to Sagi due to being unearthed by him when Sagi was a child, and Millie is a sheltered girl who joined Sagi to get away from her sheltered life. While they appear simple on the surface, all 3 of these characters harbor dark secrets, some of which are unbeknownst even to them. Additionally, for all his generic positive character traits, Sagi does begin the story in the employ of the Empire's Dark Service as an assassin, and the story begins on a mission in which he is set up to publicly take the fall for the Emperor's assassination, despite that being the mission officially assigned to him. This renders him and his companion Gilo fugitives, and the intrigue only builds from there. As he is fleeing the palace, Sagi is confronted with a monster known as Malpertio's Afterling, and upon slaying it, he experiences a sort of psychic migraine, which transitions into a sequence in which he awakes in a completely different location with a completely different group of characters, who refer to him by the name Marno. After some time in this state, he returns to his own reality, but is confronted with more Afterlings throughout the story, causing the narrative to bounce back and forth between these Sagi and Marno sections. They are of course linked, but I will leave you to discover how. And with that, you should be more than ready to embark on your adventure through the Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster. Speaking as a fan, I would like to leave you with one final piece of world-building advice, as strange as that sounds. This isn't necessarily canon, but there's nothing preventing it from being canon. If you would like to create a very interesting narrative link between the two entries as you play through them, then when you start up your file in Eternal Wings, which again you should play first, name the Guardian Spirit character Daimon. That's D-A-I-M-O-N. It will go on to create a really cool connection late into Origins. Pick whatever name you want in Origins aside from that one. Lastly, I hate that I need to start doing this, but I am finally trying to grow the channel a bit, so if you enjoyed this video, then please, do the algorithm things. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you want. I put out a wide range of game-related content, covering a broad range of franchises, both niche and mainstream. I also legitimately read and respond to comments, so if you leave one, I will see it. Alright, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back. Peace out.